And welcome to episode 47 of the Relationship Restaurant. We are Poppy and Jeff Spencer. Delighted to have you with us. And we're all about heart-healthy communications and heart-healthy eating and a lot of heart-healthy things that we're going to be doing here at the holidays. And we have a survival kit for the family gathering. 7 tools to prepare a healthy emotional feast as we go into Thanksgiving here and the rest of the holiday season. Poppy, one of the things we've seen that these gatherings can often be fueled with a lot of tension and emotion.
You know, many have already queued up their embittered discussion points for family gatherings, or worse, sometimes we've even heard of people canceling their visits to join the family based on political differences.
You mean like these midterm elections we just had?
Right.
That got everybody all fired up, just like a couple of years ago when we had the presidential election.
Right. And so
no one could speak.
Again, it's highly charged and there's talk of voter fraud. And so we just have a unsettledness about unrest in the country. And so the one sacred place ought to be the dining room table when we all come together in November and December and gather. And especially at the holidays, this is the one time where family can serve as an anchor. Each member at the table rolls up their sleeves and asks, what can I do to make things better? Does my protesting or dismissing my father or grandfather help the world at large?
No, it sure doesn't. You know, Bobby, one of the things that the holiday Thanksgiving often takes me back to a challenging memory. The first Thanksgiving we had after 9/11, that's just a short 2.5 months after I lost my brother in the World Trade Center and the disasters. It was a very tough time to be sitting at that Thanksgiving table, a very somber gathering. But just as we were getting ready to sit down, we were watching some of the evening news, and Tom Brokaw was commenting about the fact that it was the first Thanksgiving after the 9/11 attacks. And he said a lot of people are going to be sitting down at tables with an empty chair at that Thanksgiving table, which was exactly what we were doing. And boy, did that hit home. And I remember so clearly having to watch my mom just get up and leave the room just to try to hide how hurt she was by that whole...
And trying to compose herself.
Trying to recompose herself. And I've often said, as horrible as the whole events were and as still sad as I am with the loss of my dear brother, I don't have regrets because I was very fortunate to have a wonderful relationship. And we had done so many great adventures together, and I would have been very upset if we'd had a bitter relationship of any sort and hadn't resolved any things that so many people have problems with. But I try to choose never to look back on these things with a sad eye.
And the thing is, that's one of the things that I most noticed about Jeff is that he reframed 9/11 with his mantra.
I've never let this disaster be the definition of the end of my brother's life.
So it's a choice, and that's kind of the operative word that we're trying to get along here, is that we can choose how we think and feel and behave. He could have fueled all that anger and resentment and channeled it into the terrorists that took the life of his brother and so many others that day, but he chose not to. It was a choice, and he instead fueled his energy towards cathartic experiences to help him heal, to remember him and recall him with happy times. And I guess that's what we're suggesting today, is that instead of choosing to have the last conversation with a family member or a Friendsgiving or whatever that may be, possibly with many generations sitting at your table, choose to just pick out the good stuff. Just look for the good things in people. That's why this survival kit that we have will be really helpful for you.
I feel very good that I've been able over the past 17 years to honor my brother with many different things that we've done, and to always try to look to the silver linings and be grateful for the great time that we did share. In fact, recently took part in an event where I stood up for my brother and walked his daughter down the aisle at her wedding. So another great way I was able to honor him. You never want the memory of the last conversation you had with your grandfather, who might have stormed the beaches of Normandy in World War II, to include you telling him he doesn't understand anything when we talk about politics, because that's one of the things that often happens when people say, well, you're just so wrong. You don't understand what the world is really like. And I bet you someone who stormed the beaches of Normandy really knows what the world can be like. So
right. And so just have some compassion and respect for those different generations that are at the table.
Try not to ever alienate these family members and sever these friendships. But anyways, here are 7 tools we want you to keep in this holiday survival kit.
And you can also find this online at our website. It's poppyandgeoff.com, poppyandgeoff.com. Just sign in there and you'll get a free downloadable thing. You can even print something out. It's really cool, and leave them at the place for all the family gatherings. So the number one thing is prepare the emotional feast. And so we're using air quotes here. Just as you prepare all day in the kitchen, sprinkle your prep time with conversations of what you already know to be your family or friends, members' positions on everything from politics to texting at the table.
Those divisive points.
Yeah. And if grandma is going to be resentful and get triggered and become angry because your teenager is texting at the table, please ask your teenager to remove the device. If Uncle Mike goes off on the election and these results and starts a political firestorm, perhaps before you sit down, you agree as a whole unit that if you talk about politics, it'll only be for X amount of time. So it's kind of agree on some ground rules for this multi-generational gathering. And also, we find this many times too, that tension is palpable when a large group is gathering. If somebody has a substance abuse issue, decide ahead of time what your thoughts and behavior, and communicate to children what they can expect so that you can prepare everybody. And that's what we call preparing the emotional feast.
The second thing we want you to consider is to acknowledge and accept, someone voted in a different position than you voted for, a different candidate or different party. It doesn't mean the person is completely defined by all of those political views. If you insert these words, you're right. That always sounds funny. You're right to the person who spouts what you believe is propaganda. It does not mean that you agree with them, but it validates their First Amendment rights. Something like, what, Sarah, we just had a discussion this morning when we were peeling the potatoes. I explained to the kids what's so great about our country is that people are free to express their opinion. This is the greatest thing that we have, our freedom of speech. And the kids are learning about our democratic process, our civil liberties, and how one view that's different from another is still respected. And it does nothing to diminish the family love we still share.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a great idea. This is one of the things that unfortunately we've lost a lot of here of late here with these elections.
And the other thing, and sometimes there's religious differences, people at the table. That's why so many times Thanksgiving is a time where everybody from every ethnicity, every religious sect or non-religious sect can come together and still be grateful that they have human beings in their life.
It's an American holiday. It's not any kind of a religious holiday.
So find common ground. If the conversation does become political, why don't you agree on protecting and securing the people of the United States? What would you do to do that? What would you do would you help the inner cities? Would you work on the homeless? Ask people what they would do at the table to help out the greater community at large, either in your local, regional, state, or even nationwide. What are some of their ideas? So in other words, you take their anger off the table and channel it toward something productive.
And there are number 4, there are great teachable moments. When you're gathered together, let each person at the table share a story, including those who know a thing or two about civics, some of the more elderly groups. Discuss why we have different branches of the government, like when we had the whole question of the Electoral College back in 16. Right. That was just a thing nobody understood. So why do we have that? And there's a great reason we have these things. When family members hear from a grandfather or grandmother what life was like 70 years ago, some of the challenges and hardships they endured, they can learn how they can deal and survive with so many other things. It's very empowering.
Right. And then number 5, redirect. This is something that we do all the time. Redirect your stories with humor and add some ladling of love. We choose that.
I know I always love that when I can see things are going down a pathway. I search my mind. Okay, where can I take this this conversation on a detour here and take it to something else much more light and agreeable?
So it's really having that awareness as you look around the table and you see someone's face. You can read their micro expressions. You can look at their body language. And if they're becoming upset, redirect them. It's probably just a call for attention. They don't even know it, but they want to be validated. Mm-hmm. Every single person at that table needs to be validated. So we choose our thoughts and our behavior. And so when we consider redirection, sometimes it's intentional and not. You change the topic. So if you see someone start to squirm or they get up from the table and they clear a little bit too early, it's okay to shift. It's okay to say,
plates are banging in the kitchen, you can hear it.
Right. Grandpa makes a good point. And he's seen a lot of things happen over the course of his 86 years. Grandpa, can you tell us about the time you were 11 and you and Aunt Lila drove the tractor into the side of the barn? Redirect and make someone else tell that story, that it's a beloved story that everybody has already heard, but it really does cause our cortisol levels, our stress hormones to go down, and it causes those dopamine elevations to occur also.
It's a great thing for all of us to keep in mind and keep shifting when things, at any point in life also. That's one of the things that Bobby and I have seen we try to do on a regular basis whenever these kind of conversations. Doesn't it just have to happen at Thanksgiving?
Right. And the other thing you can do is plan ahead of time to ask with each person at the story, recall ahead of time and write it down. Write down one thing that you're going to ask each person in case you need to redirect. You would say, okay, I'm going to ask my sister Jennifer about the time that she did this. I know we have different political positions. I know we have different religious positions. I want to find some common ground here. I'm going to ask her to tell the story about the time that she stuffed my head in a trash can or whatever it is, and the fallout, what happened after that, so that everyone can be elevated to laughter. So write those stories down with each member at the table. Have one point of connection that you can do that.
And this is another exercise. Number 6 is resolutions. Sounds like we're doing New Year's Eve here.
No, we're not.
Not New Year's Eve.
Resolutions are all year long.
At each table setting, right next to the fork, have a pen and a piece of paper that begins with, if I could make 3 changes in the world, they would be, and have 3 blank spots, 1, 2, and 3. And then on a second piece of paper, have the words, 3 things for which I am grateful, and have 1, 2, 3 spaces. Each person at the table will read aloud and share their voice. And this is a great way to, again, find those areas of common ground. And so many times in these political conversations, all we do is say the other guy is bad and wrong. None of us are doing anything to say, here's good steps that we could do to make things better. And here's 3 wonderful things that I'm grateful for, because we all are grateful for something. So it's a great way to refocus the conversation in a very positive fashion.
We've done this at the Thanksgiving table. We've had family and friends at our Thanksgiving table for the last 8 years at least. And we have done this. Boy, tears come out.
It's very emotional.
It's very powerful. Lots of love. People that have health challenges are so grateful to be sitting there. They've had hospital stays. They've recovered, or they're still recovering, and they feel so blessed, and they start crying, and so everybody else at the table starts crying too about how grateful they are. So when you can cultivate a family table of love like that, it is so incredible for everybody.
In fact, Poppy doesn't even know, but I'm getting emotional recalling something in my own mind right at this moment, where my Aunt Dorothy and Uncle Elmer I was visiting them for Thanksgiving, and they lived nearby in South Florida when I was going to college in Florida. And Dorothy had just gotten over a very tough surgery, and she literally got released Thanksgiving morning. And my uncle and I went through a fire drill of trying to put together a Thanksgiving dinner, and pulled it off fairly well with a lot of help of Publix and Morrison's Cafeteria, who cooked the turkey and everything else. But I remember how emotional Dorothy was to be able to be home, and be home with her her husband and some family and enjoy that. It was a wonderful moment because she didn't live a whole lot longer after that either. But it was just to have that one moment was so special.
And I think that's the thing that we get to when we have these family gatherings. Yes, there's very different dynamics, everybody's personality. And that's why, as Myers-Briggs certified practitioners, we always ask people you can go around the table and talk about your Myers-Briggs. You can absolutely say, well, this is how I would approach this, right?
And some people have absolutely no idea what Myers-Briggs is, but many others are very well schooled in it. But it's always a fascinating conversation. But people get an understanding of that because if they've never considered it, it's always an interesting way to look at your personalities, your dynamics, why people get along, why they don't.
Right. A lot of times at family gatherings, I've noticed this even with our own children, that there's teasing going on, there's jockeying for dominance and sibling order, birth order. And we always try and we acknowledge it, we talk about it. And that brings us to our next point, which is accountability. Go around the table and ask each person to say what he or she will do next month or next week to act on their written desired changes. You can even partner up to complete the action, but also encourage family reparations, connection, and bonding. I don't know if the Thanksgiving table is time, but at least it's time to think about it. What could you do to repair a strained relationship with a sibling, a parent, a child, a friend? What can you do to do that? Even an ex. We, in our divorce practice, we always encourage people to do that. There's a lot of high emotions, charged emotions around the holidays, especially if you've got your kids at one place and the kids at another.
Absolutely the case. And it's always a great thing to do. Okay. Well, I
just want to repeat these one more time. We're going to go through them from the top. So the number one thing is prepare the emotional feast. That's where you get everybody on board. Here's all of the possible things that have happened in the last year.
Number 2 is acknowledge and accept. People all have a right to have opinions and do things.
And number 3 is find that common ground. Look for the things that are right between your family members and how their different values and opinions. Find the things that are the crossovers that intersect.
Number 4, look for those teachable moments because each of us have something to share and teach each other that we didn't know before.
Right. And number 5 is redirect. This is my favorite one, is redirect with stories, humor, adding love in there, throwing in sprinklings of love is so important.
Look for those little segues. When someone says something that can trigger a thought in your head, is like, oh, that reminds me of that great story that Poppy's mom loves to tell. And I can always kind of segue into that little story.
Because these are all things that we can choose. We can choose to look for that good one. And then number 6 is resolutions. At each table setting, right next to the fork, have a pen and a piece of paper that begins with, if I could make 3 changes in the world, it would be 1, 2, and 3. And on the second piece of paper, have the words, 3 things for which I am grateful, 1, 2, and 3. And everybody has that. And you can even download that off our website and print it out, and it's already there.
We have this pre-prepared for them? They don't even have to do it themselves?
No.
How wonderful of you to think of that.
Print it out and cut it out and do that. And it's so fun to have the kids, if you have little children, have them do that, pass them around. Children are always a wonderful catalyst to bring people together with love.
And the last, number 7, accountability. Everybody share one of the changes they want to have in their life and what they'll be accountable for.
Right. So choose, that's our operative word today. Choose to communicate by sharing stories of triumph over tragedy. And if you find yourself that everyone's just clinking forks and plates and making not a lot of conversation, well, there's always football.
Always football. There's always plenty of that. So,
and people will do that, won't they? They'll do that at the Thanksgiving table when somebody has said something and it drops a big silence on the table. People will often segue themselves and they'll say, wow, the turkey is just cooked just right, or the stuffing is so moist, or they'll revert to that. And that's always often a sign for you to pick up and share one of those stories. Segue to that person that has maybe their face is flushed, maybe they look upset, and target that person and say, hey, Thomas, remember the time we did such and such? And draw them in through a beloved memory that you can share with them.
Well, we hope this helps you get well prepared for your Thanksgiving gathering and all the rest of your holiday gatherings. This is something that Poppy and I like to put into practice. So we look forward to hearing great things back from you about how your holiday went so well.
Okay. And again, you can download it at poppyandgeoff.com, POPPYANDGEOFF. You can print it out, have the kids spread it out at the table as a little on their place cards next to it, a little tiny piece of paper. It'll be great. And we wish you all the best in the holidays. Blessings. We leave you with choose to look for the good stuff.
We are Poppy and Jeff for the Relationship Restaurant. Talk to you soon.